Hello, Westchester. You are listening to the inaugural podcast that we are calling Westchester Informed. This is Ryan, and I am your host. We'll bring in our first guest today, which will be good. We're going to talk a lot about home rule and get to know him a little bit more. But first thing I want to start off with was a few sort of housekeeping items. Kind of a disclaimer. One, I don't really know exactly what I'm doing yet. Things will get better as I go, so it's not going to be perfect. But this is also not sponsored by the village in any way. It's not necessarily something that's particularly being supported directly by them. So I'm independent, and I'm basically just here to give a voice to the residents. I'm here to give a voice to the village and find out what we can do to become better informed and to make sure that we make this the best village we can. I love living here, and I think there's a lot of issues coming up that I think are critical. And for me, at least, Facebook wasn't the place to find out as much as I could. And I think we're capable of having longer, drawn-out conversations with good discourse. And so I wanted to provide that. You can find us on Facebook. I did create a Facebook page called Westchester Informed, and I am Ryan Joseph on Facebook, so you can find us there too. And right now I'm just going to be self-sponsored in a way. I have a company, Pravda LLC, that does rehab work and have my real estate license. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, I can help you with that. And I do a lot of rehab and fix and flip properties. I've done a lot around here in Westchester and all over in Chicagoland. So I've dealt with quite a few villages around, not just in Westchester, but around the Westchester and suburbs. So yeah, and along those lines too, I wanted to say Happy Valentine's Day to my wife Carolyn as well. So, in getting this project off the ground, she's kind of spent some lonely nights while I sit and read material and hone in on what I'm trying to do to accomplish this. So, if you listen to these and you feel like you want to support this in any way you can, certainly you're welcome to give contributions on the Facebook page. There's going to be a little button. It says shop now, but it's basically the only way Facebook would let me provide a link to a PayPal account. So I'm going to be full disclosure with anything that I receive there, but in terms of equipment and I'd like to buy a page ad if I could get enough to do a full page ad in the paper or something like that. I wanted to make sure that people know about this as much as they can. So if anything, just share it on Facebook and talk about it, and hopefully it's a resource that everybody can find super valuable. So I appreciate that. At the end of the video on Facebook that I make, or it's not really going to be a video on Facebook, it'll be through YouTube. There's actually also a way to insert poll cards. So at the end of the videos, the YouTube videos, there'll be a poll that I'll be taking that'll say, do you support home rule? And if there's an issue with future podcasts, this has been really a whirlwind with there being home rule right on the ballot right away. So it's been tough to kind of get everything going. And so obviously I'll have more time. Hopefully there won't be such serious issues coming up, but I can always throw out a poll card to get your feedback on whether or not you support home rule, and just kind of maybe that would help to give some feedback to the village as well. But at least I'd be curious too, because after I provide this kind of information, I think people can sort of have either a change of mind or change of heart or whatever it might be. I know I have, just to kind of get into that a little bit. I've read a lot of information. I've read a lot about home rule, and it's funny because the more I read, the more I understand why it's a thing. And so hopefully we can get into what does it mean, what is it, and all the good stuff about it. And then obviously we have Trustee Nick Steker here today. He is our first guest on the first podcast, full podcast. And then I'm also backing this up back to back with Frank Perry. So a lot of good information, a lot of good feedback from our trustees, which will be great. This guy is super passionate. I talked to him only once on the phone, and I can tell you that he cares a lot about our village, and he cares a lot about what goes on, and he wants the best for it. And that's just from trying to tell him that I had this idea for a podcast and that, it may or may not work out. and he thought it was a great idea right off the bat, and really supported me. And I could tell coming through just with the way he talked that he was definitely he definitely supports and is passionate about this town. So with that said, how are you, Nick?
Good. Tired there, long night at the firehouse, but happy to be here.
Yeah, speaking of that, so tell me more. I don't really know you, and maybe a lot of people in the village don't necessarily know you either. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became trustee, I guess.
Yeah, you know what? I'm a townie. I've been here my entire life. My father was born here. The family moved from Cicero and had their house built on Manchester. My mom still is there. And she taught at Divine Infant for a long time, just recently retired. And then when I moved out 20 years ago, I purchased my first house on Boger, and then when it was time to have a family, we decided to get a bigger house, and me, my wife, and my two beautiful daughters now live over off of Mayfair by DP neighborhood. So it's great. Been here all my life. I've been active in the community. I've always just been very service-oriented. It's kind of been my passion. I've worked in government my entire adult life since the age of 18. So, and I'm one of those people who, if you want change, I like to be a part of the change. I don't want to just tell people what they're doing wrong. I want to be a part of the change. I want to hear what people have to say, and then I want to try to make it better. So it's kind of always been my thing. I've been a fireman now in Franklin Park for, I'm going to hit 21 years next month. I'm a lieutenant there. And given the fact that I have a 2-year-old and 3-year-old, I'll probably be there for 20 more.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's okay. Kind of my thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, along those same lines, I when you were talking about, change, being in real estate, it was one of those things where I saw a lot of the permitting process, and then I saw some of the things just living here. And you think, I think a lot of residents have this feeling where it's like, this isn't right, or this should be better, or this should be different. But like I said, in the intro to this podcast, like, we're all the same. We all have busy lives with kids, and you just don't ever come around to deciding that you're going to get over to the meetings and really like take a stand or make a change. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we need the people that do that, that will step up, and then you have to trust them. So it's like, did you feel that feeling when you were living here and stuff growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. The thing is what I was always taught is it's easy to complain, but give me a solution. And before I usually, even at work at the firehouse and stuff, it's easy to point out flaws and problems and everything, but you try to figure out a solution. How can we make it better before I'm going to go ask this person to change, or before I'm going to go complain about a process or whatever? Let me try to figure out how we can make it better. So then maybe it's easier for there to come up with a solution that way. That's what we see here. I mean, the board is always open to new things. If we're doing something I don't utilize, I utilize probably less than 5% of the city services here. I'm just, that's just it. Mm-hmm. So if there's something that we could do better, or there's something that we're doing wrong, I'm not flipping houses in town. If there's a problem with our permitting process, I wouldn't know about it unless I hear from you. Yeah. So that's why I always just encourage people to do is, talk to us. Tell us that we're your voice. We're your representation on the board. We're here to address policy and and give the department heads the tools that they need to be successful. Their success is based on feedback from you guys, and if we're doing things the right way, and if we're doing things best practice out there.
Yeah. For sure, and that's and coming up with this home rule stuff, and I was seeing it on Facebook, and there's a lot of back and forth, like you said, and it's a big issue. And you look at some of the things, at least in going through this particular issue with home rule, it's been one of those things that's just been sort of eye-opening. The more you dig in and the more you read, and I'm sure you probably felt this way just even becoming a trustee and coming up where you feel like something needed changed, and you're thinking, how do we make a solution to that? Or people bringing them to you and saying, this needs to change. Well, maybe you should read into it a little bit more, make sure you have all your information before you take such a strong opinion. And one example I have is I got a text message from somebody who I know doesn't live here anymore, but very adamant about that Westchester should be a no to home rule. And it's interesting because you have such polarized thinking, but then when you really read the information in the material and you understand some of the cases and some of the other things in the other towns that have happened and not happened because of home rule, you start to go, wait a minute, and it really makes you think, and it makes you think like what could be causing such a polarization in this issue, and is it warranted? And so I get this is such a basic question for you, but like, could you explain what a trustee is and how you became one?
Yeah. Basically, in Westchester, we're elected at large to represent the residents on the board and the council there. There's 7 members. We have 6 trustees and the mayor. And we're at large. And by at large, we're village-wide. Some cities are set up aldermans, just like Berwyn. Some places are set up where they represent a specific neighborhood. Where in Westchester, we vote for, the trustees are all village-wide. And we have our meetings twice a month. We pass budget, we pass policy, and we're supposed to be your voice and represent you here at these council meetings. I'm at my 3rd term, and prior to that, I served as a police and fire commissioner here in town for 4 years prior to becoming a trustee. Prior to being a police and fire commission, I was on the library board for I think maybe 6 years, and prior to that, I was on zoning and stuff. So I've always, the one good thing I could bring to the table too is a lot of historical background, just because I've kind of been involved one way or another in a lot of the things that have been going on here for the last 20 years.
Okay.
So
how long is the term?
A term is 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going on like, this will be, you put in 8 years doing this.
I'm actually, this is my 11th year now as trustee.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot, and that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate, is because it takes a lot. It takes a lot, and I mean, you could just show up here and have no opinion. You could show up here and have not read or done any of your homework or anything, and you might be able to get by, but that's not what I've been elected to do, and that's not how I want to be viewed as representing the residents. So it's difficult to, if you just go buy a gallon of milk at Jewel, you might get cornered for 2 hours about somebody complaining about their neighbor's fence. I mean, that's the problem with local politics. You're subjected to
Sure.
Hearing everybody out, but what? That's what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And so it could be. It could be taxing sometimes with these little things that just take up a lot of your time. But you know what? I'm here for the long run. I want to make it a better place for me and my family. I bought in this town twice because I want to stay in this town.
Yeah.
So I'm
yeah. Same here. And that's why I'm out here doing this, is because, man, I mean, if you're willing to do those little things, then we got to hear you out on the big issues, and we got to understand more from you guys.
Absolutely.
So all six trustees are elected. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
Correct.
So we just had a meeting.
Yes.
You want to because we just had a new police chief sworn in, and then another
and a new trustee.
Yeah.
So Sherby Miller, she was great. Sherby was originally our city clerk. And then she moved over to the trustee spot, and she was going to be moving for work and personal matters, so she had to step down. And when Sherby stepped down, it created a vacancy, and then that vacancy was just filled by the mayor at the last board meeting. So now that spot will be up, I believe, at the next election cycle to be elected. But to fill the vacancy, it's appointed until the end of the term.
Yeah,
Correct.
I get it. Okay. So it's appointed to fill the vacancy until the end of the term.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And just so happened, like, when was the elections were just like last year, weren't they, or a year before? Might have been.
I think it was April 19.
Yeah.
I want to say.
Okay.
Jeez.
All right. And the new trustee is.
The new trustee is a gentleman, Robert Morales. He's been a longtime resident, part of the Divine Parish.
Okay.
And honestly, I've only met him a couple times.
That's
talked to
fine.
him a
Yeah,
couple
I mean,
times, and
if it being appointed, yeah, I didn't know if you knew much about him or not. Or,
No, I
yeah.
really don't.
See, and that's the thing. Yeah, we'd love. That's why there's going to be so many more of these. Is because I'd love to just be able to dig in and get to know a lot more people around the village. And in order to do that, though, there kind of has to be some space to not have marijuana and home rule right on the first ballot.
Yeah.
But it's all good.
Yeah, but I'm excited. He's been
good.
coming to our board meetings. He was very passionate about, about wanting that trustee spot and wanting to be a part of this. So he's going to be sitting right to my left for all the next board meetings. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, we can dig in.
Yeah, let's go.
Some of this is going to sound like I'm reading, and that's because I am. But I think it's important to make sure that people understand at least what I'm coming across, and then what some of these things, say in terms of what this actually is. And so, from my understanding, at least, in 1970, Illinois gave the right for municipalities to be home rule, and that includes like Chicago, and counties have that ability as well. So it never used to be that way. It was always just kind of like state rule, but then everything down to minor issues were having to be brought to referendum, and it was just a big old mess, really. So like villages or municipalities needed the ability to kind of do their own thing according to what their needs were, and sort of that's kind of how it came about. And I know that's just a like sort of general synopsis, but in terms of definition, I suppose, let me find one of the best definitions. So Article 7 states that a home rule unit may exercise any power and perform any function pertaining to its government affairs, including but not limited to the power to regulate for the protection of public health, safety, morals, and welfare, to license, to tax, and to incur debt. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives a synopsis of what you can do as a home rule municipality. Home rule municipalities can only be held once, at least getting them back to, I know this was one of the questions, is once somebody becomes a home rule, how do they become not a home rule? Because like any municipality that is over 25,000 residents automatically is a home rule municipality. Correct. But they can vote to take that away.
Correct.
Okay, so every 47th month or every 47-month period, there's an ability to do that. Give me your take. Okay, so like that's just at least my definition, I guess. Or like, do you have any take right now on, like, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, the biggest thing is it's local control. We run into a lot of red tape with things that we want to do that would impact our residents, but we're bound by the statutory limitations of the state or the county. And that's one of the things with, and also every year in legislation they always try to lower the threshold to make almost all municipalities home rule, just because it comes up time and time again. How a city with 1 million people runs is going to be a lot different than a city with 600 people or 16,000 people. A heavy industrial community is different than a bedroom community. We're all different, but yet without having the ability to treat ourselves separate from the others, it could be difficult. So, most recently we ran into the incident with the dog attack or attacks in the summer. A lot of people were frustrated. We followed the process. I mean, nobody liked the process. Nobody was a fan of the process. And the attorney had said most municipalities adjudicate this in-house and can handle this in-house. when they're home rule. We're not home rule.
Explain. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Just explain what you mean by dog issue. I mean, some people, even myself, wasn't necessarily aware of the details.
I'm sorry. With the pit bull had attacked, or 2 pit bulls had attacked a dog, killed the dog, and the owner was injured as well. And then there was a second attack by the same pit bulls. So, and we were frustrated. Everyone was frustrated. The courtroom was packed, and the police department. I mean, we even had the head of the state's attorney's office from Maybrook here. I mean, that doesn't normally happen, but she's a resident, and actually she came here and she listened to everybody's frustrations and stuff. But the letter of the law took it out of our hands, where we could have hopefully streamlined it, and it could have gone a lot faster, and it probably would have been more favorable, because we're not just another name on a docket like in Cook County. We're here. There's a face, and we know what's going on. Our residents are scared. People are worried, and we want to take care of this the way that we feel is best for Westchester. And we didn't have that ability. So I mean, that's just one small thing that came up, though, that could have made a difference.
Could have made a difference if we were home rule?
Correct.
Okay. And do you feel like there's certain things that what would have been different necessarily? Would we have had a sort of an easier time?
We would have been judge and jury.
Okay.
Yeah, we would have been judge and jury. It would have streamlined the process. It would have gone a lot faster.
Okay.
And because that's what I think a lot of the frustration came about, was the process.
Yeah.
And people kept showing up like, hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey, this, hey, that.
Yeah.
And we would have been judge and jury, and it would have gone a lot faster. We would have hopefully taken care of the situation after the first attack, if it met the threshold, and then hopefully there wouldn't have been another attack.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned, not funny, but it's just interesting that you mentioned the animal thing, because I was reading somewhere that there is that power to be able to deal with stuff like that in terms of dog licenses and different things. And so, that's where in my mind, the chicken thing came up, because, my wife wanted chickens, and she got her chickens, but, that's the other thing. I mean, I'm somebody who, I'm never really, hopefully I don't. I mean, I want to bring in interesting points and ask the right questions for the residents to get the right information, but I don't want to really put out a strong opinion one way or the other. Mm-hmm. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sort of middle of the road when it comes to whether or not we should have absolute freedoms within our personal property, or mm-hmm. whether the government should be able to mandate things or step in or whatever it might be. So I get it, in some cases, and I don't get it in others, and it's so.
Well, and there's extremes, and believe me, we have a lot of new board members now, and I always kind of put out my disclosure, guys, this is another squeaky wheel walking in. We have to be careful, because changing one thing can just lead to another problem, and then now you're going to have, I'll never forget one of the first meetings after when Paul came back in as mayor. A guy came in and was like, "Oh, I don't like I have a sign in a no parking sign in my yard on the parkway," and I was laughing. Paul just said, "Okay, well, we'll put it in your neighbors." And I'm like, what? Hold on. How is that? That's not solving the problem. Instead of educating on why the signs have to be where they're located, and just changing something to make one person happy sometimes creates another problem. And that's one of the issues we've had with the alleys. A lot of people. I've been an advocate for trying to get these alleys fixed on the north side of town for a long time, and also off of Manheim Road. And people have been complaining about the alleys. Well, can't you do this? Can't you do this? Well, the problem is that right now, your backyard may flood. Well, over time, people have built up garages and all these different grades. So now, without doing one whole corrective thing, all we're doing is just taking the problem from your backyard and putting it in somebody else's backyard.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not good government. That's not
Yeah.
you're not fixing the problem. We're not getting
Yeah.
to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
If we're going to do it, we have to do it right.
Yeah.
And but that costs money.
Yeah.
You know, and Westchester does not have a lot of money. So we are a bedroom community, and we rely heavily on, you know, property tax, which we don't charge. We're one of actually the lowest in property taxes, property tax rates. When you look at communities like Oak Brook, Schaumburg, you know, where the market fluctuated and stuff, you know, they went from really good years to really bad years. The nice thing about Westchester is we're pretty stagnant. You know, we kind of we don't see those big drastic drops and peaks and valleys and stuff. But the problem is that we don't have a lot of, you know, if Mariano's or Jewel were to go out of business today, there'd have to be some major cuts.
Yeah.
And we don't have a lot of fat, I'll
Yeah.
tell you that much.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of money. There's not a lot of money for pet projects. It's not like, hey, Nick, you know, where you can have, here's your $1 million, how you want to spend it amongst your constituents, you know, and go fix all their alleys. I'd love to fix their alleys, but we don't have the money.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things people need to understand is that the reason why home rule is a thing is because you have villages and municipalities with tons of industrial. You have villages and municipalities with tons of commercial. I talked to where I hang my license at Long Realty in Westmont. Jim said himself, he's like, we were one of the largest, I think he said like hotel or motel communities or condos as well. Like we have I think it was condos. I think we have the highest condo population or something like that. So it's like, really the point is just that every community is so different that you kind of have to have some ability to shift and move.
Exactly. There's not a wholesale answer.
Yeah. And if you're only ruled by the state, so the state, you know, like just recently at the last meeting, there was the 3-cent, you know, gas tax or whatever it is. So that's like one thing afforded to you by the state then to be able to pass to like help that, right? And so you have, you know, we're already taxed enough by the state, but it's like, you know, there's only so much you can do
and that was a lifeline.
Raise money.
That was a lifeline that they passed out to non-home rule communities. And the funny thing was we didn't hear a word about it. That was a 3-cent gas tax, which is basically some of the avenues that we would be looking at with home rule to finance these infrastructure problems. And that, I think they were estimating $250,000 just by doing that. Well, that $250,000 amortized over years could finance a pretty good street program, a pretty good alley program, just by doing that and not asking you, the taxpayer, to finance it.
Right.
Somebody had reached out to me, it was yesterday or the day before, something about the alleys, and they paid for the alleys themselves, and that's an option. To me, that wouldn't be my first option. I don't think I'd want to pay for it, and we have talked about that in the past. It's been brought up before the board because we've talked about what are our options with these alleys, trying to get them done. I think it's hurting the property values. I drive up and down those alleys after a rainstorm, and I get sick to my stomach when I see some of these people's yards and what they have to deal with. The garages become abandoned because they stop parking back there, and then which now leads to parking issues on the side streets. And you know, there's got to be an answer. And one of the things that they had talked about was a special assessment. And with a special assessment, essentially you're kind of mortgaging your alley with your neighbors. Now, and I don't want to, don't quote me on this, but I believe it was only you need 51% of the neighbors that it would directly affect to that. Well, if you're struggling to even pay your rent, to pay your mortgage, and now, you know, 51% of your neighbors decide that they're gonna jump in on a $400,000 alley, although you might really need that alley, you may really want that alley. That could be the difference between now you having to sell your house.
Yeah.
To me, I would think that's a last resort.
Yeah.
If I could put So the gaming machines in town, for example, because we're non-home rule, we can only charge, and we don't have a lot of gaming machines, but we can only charge $40 per machine. Some of these machines are raking in, the owner's walking away with $30,000 a month. We could be charging thousands of dollars for that business license or for that license on those machines. I would much rather have them absorb that cost than you absorb that cost.
Yeah.
And those are the types of things that we can do.
Now, see, okay, along those lines, then you bring up an interesting point, because when you talk about alcohol, tobacco, and gaming, they call it gaming now. It's gambling. And I know that somehow I feel about this is going to come out a little bit, but it's okay. So let's say you taxed a gaming institution or a business owner, and they decided they wanted to take their business elsewhere.
I get it.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you have people feeding their money into these machines, and hopefully those are some people from out of town. And I not necessarily, I don't care either way. Just like with the marijuana thing, it's like, if you're in town and you want a place to game, fine, that's fine, or gamble, that's fine. But like, that's where people's money is going, and we're encouraging that. And it's like, it's sometimes frustrating for me to see that side of it, because I think that everybody should have their freedom to choose to do whatever they want to do. But if cigarettes are everywhere, you know what I mean? It's like the Juul thing. If Juul vaporizers are everywhere, then people are going to just be more prone to, I don't know. It seems that way, but there's a whole ton of psychology to go into.
Oh no, I understand. And the goal is not to put anybody out of business, because you don't want them to pack up their bags and go somewhere else. But I will tell you, looking around and seeing what they're paying in other municipalities to be there and what they're bringing in, there's a market. There's a market for there's a market for a license, and $40 is well below market value.
Right. No, and I get it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's kind of like one of those things where some people in their mind are thinking, well, if you're complaining about home rule because you're going to get taxed, stop putting your money into a machine or into smoking and killing yourself.
I get that.
So it's just one of those things that also, it's just one of those things that I know people out there are going to have that argument where it's like, well, we're doing all these things that we get to choose to do, so everybody has their own freedom, but then they want to get really upset about the fact that Westchester would like to fund their, fire pension,
Exactly.
And it's like, well, come on, like what, because I appreciate your work and what you do, because it's like those should be some of the highest paid people. It should be hard to do, hard to maintain, and really well paid. Like they should be the people that get paid the most. Fire, police, and teachers. And my wife's a teacher, and I think that she's paid really well, and I'm glad for that. But there's a lot of places where teachers aren't, and it's just like these are the people that are keeping us safe and teaching us what we need to know to become useful citizens, good citizens. Yeah. And we're not, in a lot of cases you got, and we all need investments, but you got people that are, investment bankers, and it's like, I get it, but at the same time, anyway.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Don't want to get on a soapbox, but so we talked. Okay, so what we talked about at least so far is more around public health, safety, morals, and welfare, right? So let's talk the big one. I mean, tax, right? So there's a number of different ways in which becoming a home rule can allow you to implement taxes, and we touched on that a little bit. So I've read a lot about surrounding communities and instances and what taxes they have in place. And you're right. I think that a lot of them are implementing taxes on goods and services. And those goods and services are being purchased by people outside of the village, but also people inside the village.
Correct.
So you are being taxed by, you know what I mean? As a resident, you're being taxed, yes. But people come through Westchester. And so it's sort of similar to the marijuana thing. People are going to come through Westchester. It doesn't mean... I don't think we should judge whether or not they're good or bad people. I think we should just look at the issue of home rule and what it means to be taxed and just say, look, there's money coming from this, and a lot of municipalities have done it around us that are home rule.
Well, I mean, look at the gas tax, for example. I fill up with gas where I need to fill up with gas. I'm not hell-bent on just filling up here in town.
Yeah.
I fill up when I need it and where I need it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that do that. We have several gas stations, and that right there, just that one item that we were afforded by the state at this last meeting is going to generate $250,000. That's a big difference. That's a real big difference. And items like that, the places for eating tax that we had in place, and then I think it was the non-home rule sales tax that we passed, but we had to pass that by referendum, and it passed. But the problem is when you constantly, things have to get so bad that people have to see like, oh my gosh, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. We don't want them to get bad. We want to have a preventative maintenance program. We don't want things cost a lot more when they're destroyed.
Yeah.
When you got to build it back up completely. And so we put that in there for infrastructure, and that passed, but we have to constantly keep going back to the well.
Yeah.
The mayor brought up at the last meeting, well, maybe we should just go back to referendum for this part. Well, go to referendum for $20 million, and I'm going to ask the residents to pay $20-30 million out of their pocket if I'm proposing an idea that they're not going to have to pay, paying a couple cents if they fill up with gas, or if they buy a sandwich, or they buy beer or something like that in town. that may cost them $40-50 a year, if that, with all the things, and they're paying these in other communities to fund all these items in other communities, and they don't even realize it. So that's one of the biggest things that we need to really look at it as a community. We recognize the need, but we have to figure out how to pay for this. And it's either we could pay for this, or you could trust the elected officials that you've put in place who have firsthand knowledge of a lot of these things, to do what you need them to do and fix this stuff.
And you touch on another thing in which I read, which is just the reasons behind why home rule is put in place and what needs to occur for home rule to be put in place correctly, so to speak. Because it's not, I don't believe anymore, after really getting my information straight, I don't necessarily believe, and this isn't a statement supporting or against it. What I'm stating is that there's a lot of information and a lot of cases out there that I think people need to understand before they judge. It's a trust thing. It's trusting the leaders that you've elected. You guys all live in town. That is one of the particular things in which a study about home rule noted as important to home rule being implemented correctly or appropriately is community trust and support behind their leaders. And we're basically government is basically just a conglomeration of a community and giving people the power they need to run that community. And so if you, like what you said, if you want an example where you look to your own life and your own personal family, like we didn't always have the money to make the repairs, the preventative maintenance repairs on our cars, and then eventually got to the point where it was $2,000-$4,000. Well, now we can't afford that, and we have to get rid of the car and figure out what we're going to do to go out and get a loan. So here's another thing we're talking about, where it's like, think about how you run your own household, and just imagine what it's like to have to run an entire community, and if you don't have the ability to go out and get a loan, and we've all been there, bad credit or whatever it is, and it's not quite exactly the same. It doesn't shift exactly because obviously there's like personal credit involved and all these other issues, but it's like you can either make more, you can borrow, it's like, and I was telling somebody this, it seems and it feels like if I were to just say, you know what, I've gotten myself into a lot of debt, and I need to figure out a way to fix this. Well, I can either go out and make more, I can cut my expenses down somehow, look at those, or I could go to each one of my family members and ask them for $50 a month each, and not only just ask them, but like force them to do that. And so I think that's what a lot of residents are also thinking about is that sometimes that's what it feels like in a sense, but there's only so many ways to do this. There's only so many solutions to issues that we have. One of the big questions I get, at least when I tell people that I was doing this, is how do we get here? How did we end up in the place that we are? And is it is it strictly that we haven't been able to raise enough money, or is it because I mean we all, I shouldn't say we all, that's a generalization, but there has been a lot of talk in the last like 2 to 3 years about the way Westchester was ran and some of the leadership and some of the problems that we had. And is it your feeling that those problems are sort of solved, or is it, and did the past become an issue that we're now trying to fix?
You know, I think there's a lot of things that have gone into it, but one of the biggest things is the stability. Stability in staff. There's been a lot of turnover. People have been worried because we literally have been plugging holes for so long. We've been hiring you to do one thing, but then we've been asking you to do 5 other things, and things are falling through the cracks, and people aren't happy. This isn't what I was hired for. I'm doing this, and they're leaving. And when they leave, we lose a lot also. And we're constantly playing catch up. So it seems like it's been nice now with the new manager, Paul Nosek. A lot of my battle cries for the last few years, he's actually been like implementing, which has been extremely nice, and we've seen some wholesale changes. One of the biggest things that I've been pushing forever is getting a Facebook page, getting information out there, letting the residents know. The more they know, and I do the same thing at the firehouse. I try to educate the guys on all the issues, all things village, because then we understand where we fall in this and why we're doing this, because it's real easy to say, hey guys, we're doing this now, or this is happening now. Oh, what the heck, why? No. Well, if they understand the background, if they understand what's going on, if they understand what's led up to this, it's a lot easier for them to absorb.
Yeah.
So, we're finally starting to see some of that, which is really nice, and that's exciting for me and hopefully for everyone. But also the only way to really get out of the hole that we're in is this route, in my opinion, and that's why I am all in. I've been an advocate. I was an advocate for it last time, and I think we failed as a village because we played nervous, and we were like, well, we can't do this, we can't do that.
Well, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Let me help you out here though, because I feel like in a way that's because you're trying to fix the problem without home rule, or something like that. Maybe I'm making it too much of a thing.
Nobody wants to ask. Everybody's scared to ask this because they're worried it's going to fail. But you know what? We've been trying to do this the other ways, and there's no pot of gold.
That's all.
There is no pot of gold.
That's all they need to know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And in a sense,
there is no pot of gold.
I know this kind of sounds like it's headed toward. But basically, I'm with a guest that supports it. That's all there is to it. So, exactly. You know what I mean? Like if you've tried your best.
1,000%
to do what you can.
This isn't just like a power. This is
because people say, well, why can't you fix it without home rule? Why do you have to have? Well, because home rule is the only way in which we can implement some of the taxes and some of the things that we need to implement and we'll get into it maybe, but like some of that isn't just about taxing. That's what I want people to know that too.
1,000%. I'll tell you right now,
this.
Our fire department is down members from where they've been. Our police department is down members.
Yeah.
Our public works is down members. Front
been
office
cuts.
staff. There has been people have not been laid off, fortunately, but we have not filled positions over the last 10, 15 years. And we've definitely been doing more with less. And kudos to our employees who have done that. But there's been a price to pay, and that's with a lot of that turnover, mostly in the front office. A lot of that turnover because police and fire and public works, those guys, they're your lifers and stuff, and they're vested. But in the front office staff, with all that turnover, it creates a lot of problems. With us being non-home rule, we're only able. The tax cap, it's 5% or CPI, which is whichever is less. Well, I think, don't quote me, but CPI since I've been in office has only even gone over like, I don't even know if it's touched 2%. Well, I've been sitting in, we've had sometimes 8, 9 budget meetings trying to figure out how we're going to handle a 12%, a 15% increase in healthcare for our employees.
Yeah.
Well, if you're only able to raise, if property values at a certain time, if things peaked and and then the market fell in like 2008 or whatever, and your property taxes are kind of always the same, but labor rates are going to be between 2 and 4% every year to pay for labor, and then healthcare costs are sometimes hitting double digits on an annual basis.
Yeah.
We've got to figure out where we're going to get that money from.
Yeah.
And then we had two floods that decimated our town and our infrastructure, and we pledged that we were going to try to fix that problem, and we did. We put a lot of money trying to fix that problem. Mm-hmm. But a lot of that money we came out of reserves and stuff, and you can't survive like that. We've got it's unsustainable for us to continue on this path without having another means.
Well, yeah, the world around us goes on, whether we like it or not, and so there's not just Westchester, and that's the other thing that I kind of wanted to see for myself. Trust me, guys, this is this is as hard for me to understand and to take in as anybody, because I have been in those shoes where I'm like, we're not Chicago, why do we need vehicle stickers? Mm-hmm. And I know my wife will laugh at me if she hears this, because it's like, it's been one of my things, the thorns in my side, but reading more and understanding more and talking to you, and I'm sure more and more conversations I have, it's just going to open me up to the idea and the understanding that, look, like, this stuff isn't easy. Okay, so you have tough jobs to do in terms of running things, but also we're not necessarily paying for a sticker. We're paying to support our police and our fire and all the other things, if that's put in the hands of the people that we trust to do that right. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's been some of that in the past. The original question, I'll go back to that. Maybe there's been some problems in the past with that kind of thing, but hopefully we're doing better, and hopefully the more that we can come out with these kind of things, and I don't mean, it could be anything. I don't care if you put it in the paper, whatever it is, but this podcast and other things, I'm hoping that residents can step up and can start to understand and get more information as we have these tools, not just Facebook, but not just a podcast, but not just a paper, which begs the question. Before I let you go, I have to, ask some of the tough questions. Yeah. How come this wasn't just? Why wasn't there a little thing in the paper that said home rule will be coming up on the ballot? Before you answer, here's some things I had, and I don't want to put the answer in your mouth. You come up with whatever answer you got, but I was considering these things. Yeah. Well, maybe the paper is put together and before this even became a thing. Mm-hmm. How did it become a thing? First and foremost, how did this even become a thing?
I proposed it last year when we were talking about some of these street issues and how we were going to pay for them. Uh-huh. And quite frankly, I'm tired of having conversations that don't net any results. It's not getting your alley paved. It's not getting these water mains fixed. I'm tired of talking about it. We need to present a solution. Yeah. So I said, I think that this is going to be something that we have to put out there. And I felt that this would be the right time to do it, because this election, presidential election, is very difficult to get anything. People are angry when they're going to the polls, and they're getting federal issues are now carrying over into local issues. Sure. And also then the other thing is how do you run it if there's going to be, like at the last election, actually I talked about it I probably talked about it every year, to be honest. But like when the new members just came on, that election, how can I ask you to give a board home rule powers when you don't even know who the board is going to be? Right. So every 2 years, that's a question. That's an issue. So there's only so many times that you could put it in where it could be a focus of a local issue.
I understand that.
So that's why I felt it was important to put it this time. How we advertise it, to be honest, I don't know. I don't have anything to do with that.
No,
I
I
wish
understand.
we'd,
Were there some
a-
conversations about, well, maybe we start this, a year out, maybe we start this.
And again, if you were to go back and hear, I was very vocal about it. But again, this is something, we're always putting out fires here.
Yeah.
We don't have staff that can work on this.
Yeah.
They're, the same person that's doing this is cutting checks and is doing the water bills
Yeah.
and is dealing with this and is dealing with, has 7 other jobs. So we either have to, take their time away from something else. So, I wish that there was a way that we could be running that the web page was updated daily. I wish that we had that ability, but we don't.
Yeah.
Everybody right now is doing multiple jobs, and they're doing a great
Sure.
job. So.
And here's the other thing that, and just to give you some leeway on this,
Yeah.
because I don't want to challenge you so much, but it's
No, I
like,
get it.
the other thing is, I think people don't understand that you'd have to run the same article or the same headline in the paper every time it comes out in order for people, for everybody to finally not feel like this was sprung on them.
There's people.
And so I'm trying to give you some leeway, like, hey, I heard you say what you said, and I was like, man, even on the phone when we talked, I was like, this guy is super passionate about the fact that they're not trying to spring this, but something's going on here that you deserve to be able to explain, and that is,
you know what, things
are tough.
And one thing that I've learned through being a trustee and working in government is that what's important to you is what's important to you. There's people that swear to God, we put up that no parking sign in front of their house last night, and it's been there for 3 years. But because it never affected them until they got a ticket,
right.
They never even looked out their front window and saw, or they didn't realize that, well, just because I don't see the street sweeper on Monday, it means the street sweeper doesn't come.
Yeah.
And now you're home sick one day and you get a ticket. Well, you've always been at work. That doesn't mean the street sweepers never come down your street.
Yeah.
People aren't always paying attention unless something catches their eye. And that's why I think it's important that, we just started the village's Facebook page, and I think it's going to be updated more regularly. And I think that's going to be a good way of getting out to residents, but it can't be the only way, because there's still a huge segment of the population that is not on there. We've got to come up with multiple means. The newspaper comes out once a month, but it's written like 2 or 3 weeks in advance. It goes to the printer. So people are like, well, why didn't I hear about this in the newsletter? Well, because the newsletter was written 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, it's an uphill battle. And again, people are like, oh, I've never heard about this. Well, there's probably been 20 meetings that we've discussed this.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Even myself, I mean, people will hear excuses when they want to hear excuses, and they'll hear good reasoning when they want to hear good reasoning. And so that's why life itself is such a difficult thing to navigate, because of the way we feel and the way we are polarized, and Facebook doesn't help. I mean, honestly, social media does not help in that regard, because it polarizes people, and it makes them, it doesn't allow for conversation or to really draw this out and understand where people are coming from, and so that, like, I know we're probably getting to the point where we want to wrap up, but I want to make sure that I also talk a little bit about debt. So. Mm-hmm. In your position, so you can just speak for yourself, what is the solution to this in terms of, are you looking for home rule to start with taxation, and then we'll think about where we need to incur debt to do certain projects, or is there something that we got to have now that we're going to incur debt for, and then we're going to work on the tax stuff?
So what I think we need to do is, number one, we've been doing studies. And if you look, we just put out on the webpage. I don't know why it wasn't put out earlier. It may have been on the regular webpage, but we put it on the Facebook page. Was the alleys, and I've referenced the alleys. I've sent it to residents in the past who've been complaining to me about their alleys, and I'm like, listen, I get it, 1,000%.
Yeah.
But it's not a $50,000 fix. It's a couple $100,000 fix. And here's the report, the engineering report that shows you everything. I pushed to have that report done because I had said, how can I go out to the taxpayers and ask them for more money if I have nothing to show them? If I can't show them that this is how much it's going to cost, and this is the condition it's in, and this is how long it's going to last. You know, how can I go out there and ask them for these things? How can we ever be successful in asking you for more money or for more ability to incur debt if I can't give you this information? So we did this study, we have that study, and I think that's a huge step in the right direction. But I think what we need to do is look at where we're going to, a lot of our money is going to have to go in the first place, and then figure out what's going to be some of the best ways to fund that, and look at all the available options. But property taxes would be the dead last. And if you look at the history of home rule, in some of the literature that I've read, it shows that non-home rule communities, their property taxes go up faster than home rule communities. Home rule communities oftentimes will freeze their property taxes because they have all these other abilities to pass it on to passer buyers, you know, people that are just driving through the community, people that are staying at a hotel in their community, people that are parking in their community. So there's a lot of things like that, and I think it's important to point out that we're looking at the next meeting to pass a ordinance that's going to state that we will be bound by the same rules, statutory rules that we currently operate under. Now, you know, some people said, well, it's an ordinance, it could be undone. Yeah, sure, it could be done. 1,000%, I'm not going to lie, it could be undone by a board majority. Would it be favorable? It'd be extremely unfavorable. And I can't, for the life of me, think of one good reason why anyone would do that. When you have all these other avenues, all these other communities have been able to do this successfully, why we would be the one exception that would then have to dip into this. Yeah. But we're trying to put in there that not only are we bound by the same statute, but if that ordinance is repealed, that then the ability to repeal home rule will be on the next election cycle. It'll be on the ballot as a referendum. So if we're going to take away that ability, if we're going to try to raise your property taxes outside of the scope of what we're currently statutorily bound by, that it'll automatically trigger a referendum to get rid of home rule.
Interesting.
If residents truly think that that there's any other that we're trying to slide anything by, we're trying to do everything we can to show you that we need some flexibility to run this town. But the last thing we want to do is raise your property taxes. And I mean, we're one of the lowest.
No, I hear that.
I appeal mine every year. I try to fight it, every way I can.
Yeah, and I don't want to be taxed any more than anybody else. I just think that, it's a scary thing to think that what you hear out there is that home rule gives all these powers. And that's all the information people have, and they just think, oh, this just gives them ability to do anything they want, the blank check type of mentality. And I get that, but at the same time, I think it's important to look at the fact that, and this is just my own personal opinion, I would rather pay a little higher property tax and not see a vehicle sticker tax. Because, I get the money that it raises, but it's just a separate thing. And so, if you have 5 taxes, and this is back to psychology, I was a minor in psychology in college, and it's just always been an interesting thing to me. When you have 5 different taxes, people will look at that than if you had one tax that accomplishes the same thing. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And so it's I think that's some of the things that I'm hoping to accomplish with this, is to get people thinking that, and hearing from you those kind of ideas that, hey.
Well, and not all those taxes affect you, or you wouldn't pay directly. Somebody brought up, I think it was yesterday on Facebook, there's 35 different taxes or fees for Westchester. Okay. Do you pay an elevator inspection fee?
Yeah.
Do you pay a business license fee? You maybe pay 6 of those. Yeah. So look at, and how is that different from any other community? Yeah. But the water bill goes out to everybody. If our, aging infrastructure, I think, gosh, I can't even remember. I'd have to pull up the report, but there's a large percentage of our water mains that are over 80 years old. That's, and you're putting a good, if you're going to put a good street on top of an old water main, we've tried that. guess what happens? That water main breaks, and they got to dig up your brand new expensive street.
Yeah.
So you've got to do a lot of things like that, but nobody wants to see a $40 increase on their, for infrastructure fee on their water bill. Nobody wants to be nickeled and dimed to death with those types of things. The dog license has to go up from free to $10-15. People won't get they won't register their dog.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the other thing is like just doing the real estate in the town, and I want to have obviously all these people on to talk about permitting and those kind of things and the fees and stuff, because I've walked in and I've said, okay, I need a permit for this. Being the good citizen that I am to say, I'm going to get a permit for this, and then they'll say the fee, and I'm like, that seems excessive. And then I call around to 6 other villages in the area, and they're all half that fee. It's like that kind of makes me wonder, okay, like, does this need to change, or do we as a community need to change our view on permitting? Because I can tell you that in working with a lot of different villages, and this is kind of a tangent when it comes to taxes, but I mean, just the way in which villages raise money, and so it's one of them is the permit issue, and so. I've worked with a lot of villages, and a lot of villages have either just as high or, higher permitting fees. But I think that people misunderstand, and if I can speak at least with any experience to this, is that sometimes they misunderstand what it takes to keep certain aspects of home renovation safe and not, and building codes and all that. But I think there's one thing that villages do wrong or get wrong, and that is like over aggression in terms of enforcement and not getting the people on their side in terms of getting a permit. So if the fees are a little lower or more reasonable, you see people not, I would think you would see more people say, well, it's not that bad, it's $40, or it's not that, it's not that bad. And then the ones that maybe do cost, like a plumbing or an electrical or something that really factors in, like the fire sprinklers or something like that, it's like, okay, you're getting this permit and it's costing this much, and they're coming out and they're enforcing that. But there's a reason why they're enforcing that in that way versus just coming in. I recently did a house, and I'm not going to say where, but I recently did a house, and they charged me double for inspection fees because I hadn't pulled a permit yet, and I wasn't doing anything big or small or anything. I mean, I wasn't doing anything big. I was just light renovation, painting, changing the cabinets, this and that. The guys came in. There were 3 inspectors that came in. They walked in. They walked around. They mostly talked to me about how long I'd been doing this and what I was up to, and then they left. So it was like, it just felt like all they wanted was the money. And I get it, but at the same time, it's kind of frustrating because I'm like, there's nothing safety oriented about that. There's nothing that you're not coming in and saying, look, we're trying to keep our residents safe, so here are the issues that we're really focused on. And the rest of the stuff is, call it what it is money to help us to be able to implement some of these things, to have inspectors in the first place. You know what I mean? I've been here long enough to see people that were hired directly by the village to inspect, and then now we have a company.
We've
so
outsourced it.
So I get both sides of that and stuff like that. But this is quickly becoming clear that I need to have a separate podcast without a guest that I can go through all of these different paragraphs of all these things, because there is a lot of information that we didn't even get a chance to touch on, and some of that is specific details pertaining to debt that at least I've read. One of the sources that I want to at least say here, and I'll try to provide a link to it, is the municipal handbook. So that's a really good one. Again, I'll provide a link to it. But I think at this point, I think I've taken up plenty of your time, and you've been great in being able to express your opinion or your viewpoint on the matter of home rule. And I think it was great to get to know you and get to know more about what your thoughts were and how you're approaching it. I think you do want the best for the village, and I appreciate that. And I think that's just what this is aiming to accomplish, is to get that out there as a voice, as somebody that personalizes it, and they can see that, okay, if I'm not willing to go to a meeting, if I'm not willing to just go on Facebook and read all the comments, and let's just face it, BS comments. I mean, they're just so much that you'd have to sift through in order to get anything clear. And if this can accomplish some of that, then I hope it did. So again, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your time and your passion toward the issues, and just being able to express them.
No, thank you.
And if we need to do this again, we will. I mean, if you're willing and we need to, we will. But
Well, I have no problem talking about anything.
Yeah.
You can tell that. And
for sure.
One of the things is that I just want people to know that this is me as a resident talking. Even if I wasn't in the seat, for the long-term sustainability, if I want the services that I've grown accustomed to since a child to exist, this is something that we need to trust our elected officials with. It's really the only thing that's going to sustain everything that we have and keep us ahead. When we go with debt, we're paying more to borrow money because we're not home rule. It affects our bond rating. So we're paying more in interest. That's money that is going out of the taxpayers' hands and going into the bank that we could be putting back into the town just because of that tool.
And guys, I just want to point out, as somebody who knew nothing a week ago on this issue, he's not just saying that to support home rule. He's right. That if I want to dig into the details in my own separate podcast, I will, on specifically home rule and its laws and ordinances and all the different regulations and things that they have to follow. I can, and I think that's important too, just to make sure they know that.
1,000%. Yeah. I would encourage people to look up crime-free housing too.
Yeah.
Crime-free housing is a huge asset for home rule that we've dealt with issues in the past, and we've met a lot of red tape where there's been renters running. There's been constantly drug issues at houses and stuff like that, where if we pass crime-free housing with the ability with home rule, we can address that matter. We can get those tenants evicted. I
was just reading that somewhere.
Addison does a phenomenal job. If you want to look at an example of them. And you know what? For as many people that are out there vocally against it, I always invite them to the table, like, to just give me some reasons. Like, if you don't trust government, I get it. That's fine. But then just say that that's your opinion.
Yeah.
Don't try to sell us off as bad guys and not in the best interest of the community or the town, because it couldn't be further from the truth.
And I was one of those. I was one of those guys. I mean, as soon as I got the text, I was like, that I've heard of that before, and there's no way I'm going to let them. Look, I was one of those guys, and
I'll give anyone my cell phone number.
Again,
sit down and talk to me.
This isn't necessarily. I don't know how I'm going to vote, because I want to hear from everybody, and there's nobody out here doing this.
I want informed voters.
Right.
I wish the only people that showed up to the polls were informed voters, and that's with every election.
Yeah.
I want people to do their homework because elections matter, and we've seen that at a local level, we've seen that at a state level, and we've seen that at a federal level.
Yeah.
Elections matter, and it's important to do your homework. This is an important topic. It's an important topic that I think the more people that truly want to be educated on it and educate themselves on it, I think they're gonna. It'll be eye-opening.
Yeah.
And
there couldn't be a more important topic, and that's what was. I gotta admit, it was sort of frustrating about starting this podcast in the middle of it. Is that I needed to quickly jump on
the
this.
Time crunch.
There couldn't have been a more serious topic to affect our village, and maybe that's a blessing in disguise, because it lit a fire under my butt, and now I'm out here doing this. But it's it's a huge topic, and it will have such an impact on our village that you're right. I mean, I wish everybody would take the time. Hopefully this makes it easy enough for them to listen to, that they can take the time to listen to these. And if not, at least, don't just jump on a bandwagon, whether it's for or against. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think most of the bandwagon is against, but that's maybe because it's easy to just rail against government and taxation and things like that. But look at your own personal situation, and I've been telling people that I talk to, we attend a church that had some financial situations where they had to cut back on certain things, and it's like, until people feel something that they considered a luxury, maybe like something, I'll just say it was donuts, and it's like, you give donuts to the people every Sunday, and then you have to take those away for certain reasons, that be it financial, then that's when they take notice. And so it's like, you hate to see an entire village have to start to cut certain things that would sort of blast out that horn. Hey, this is serious.
It's gotten to this point,
we're serious. And And so that's why this is such a big deal.
Well, and that's why to say no just so you could go back to not paying attention again, I don't think that's a fair. I don't think that's not a fair argument that I want to have, because we should all be paying attention to what's going on in our communities. Yeah. And what affects residents on the north side of town might not affect residents on the south side of town, or the west side of town, or the east side of town. Yeah. There's parts of town with streetlights, parts of town with alleys, parts of town with older infrastructure, with traffic. Yeah. You can't just go back to, no, don't do that, and now I'm just going to not pay attention again until...
Yeah, and as I've gotten older, I realized there's so many things that affect your life that sometimes you can't just rail against this or that tax or government, especially locally, because you've got student loans. Those aren't necessarily the village's fault. You got healthcare costs. Those aren't the village's fault. You have all these other issues that are big issues going on in your life that can affect how you feel when that bill comes. Yeah. And so we just have to keep an open mind. We have to keep an open mind to unfortunately what has happened up to this point for the village to get to where we need to find a way to fix this or to fix something, and then what those options are. And so again, I want to wrap up because I want to be able to get to Frank, but thank you so much again.
No problem.
I appreciate your work and what you do, and let's keep the conversation going. When is the next town hall, by the way? You guys were going to put a town hall together.
I think they're going to try to do a town hall on the 1st, I believe was the date that they were putting out there.
1st of March?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a budget meeting coming up Tuesday the 18th at 6 p.m., which is obviously a public meeting. Okay. Anybody can go to that. We have a...
Are those recorded by chance, like audio at all? Or?
Yeah, it'll be recorded.
Because I was going to say, I was thinking about bringing my mic to those and just sitting by a speaker if they are on speaker, if it's just even a test, if it's big enough to pick up, powerful enough to pick up the voices. Maybe we could put those out just so. Yeah,
we could put you in touch with Greg, and I'm sure he can come up with something. We have a board meeting on the 25th, and then I think they were looking at doing a town hall on the 1st. So. Cool. I think this is a great opportunity because, unfortunately, people don't come to board meetings, and we can't have this dialogue. Yeah. I'm talking, talking amongst other informed, people that are in the know. We don't always understand. It's hard to then understand who chooses to not know and doesn't really want to know. Yeah. Who has some questions but they're scared to ask, and then who has some questions and some concerns and wants to discuss. That's the forum that we have set up right now. Not a lot. It doesn't conform to everybody, everybody's lifestyle these days, which I understand. So that's why this is kind of cool, because they can kind of just get a down-to-earth discussion. Yeah,
you're talking to people that hate you, and you're talking to people that love you.
Exactly. And I don't because at some point, on Facebook, you've got to stop. Because I've got 6, 7, 8 arguments, and 4 of them, there's no way they're just going to keep going until until we both fall asleep. And then there's other ones where you could focus on. This I think is a good opportunity for people to just kind of hear the real part of it. Yeah.
And we need to stop with the idea that the written word, especially through social media, holds more weight than the spoken word in the face-to-face, because tone, inflection, the kind of person you are, none of that comes through on social media.
Not at all.
That's just not. I know one of our favorites, Rogan, says it all the time, Joe Rogan, but it's like just none of that comes through. And so you got to be able to sit down and at least get this out into people's hands or ears where they can say, you know what, I hear it. Yeah. I hear the passion. I hear the importance to this guy. I hear, what he's trying to say. I still think that there's more work to do. I still think that there's more research for me to do, or I still think that it may not be the best idea. Fine, whatever. But the idea is that I've dug so deep into this that I started to go, whoa, I thought I had an open mind, but when it came to home rule, I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound like a good idea. Yeah. And then you get on Facebook and you're like, nobody's really making any good points. Yeah. Then you get into the research to do one of these, and you're like, whoa, okay, I knew nothing. I knew the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this kind of thing, and one of those being real estate transfer taxes. Transfer tax, yeah. Do you know, I understood it, and I'm sorry, I don't want to go down another rabbit hole when we're trying to wrap up, but I think that one of the reasons why, and I got the text from a fellow realtor.
Realtors are always against it.
But look, I think home rule still, what I read was home rule still has to pass a referendum for real estate transfer tax.
To be honest, I don't know the answer. I'm not going to pretend that I know that answer.
I'm not assuming anybody would, because it was sort of.
I believe I've read that.
Yeah.
And that's why the realtors. So and again, I don't want to keep sidetracking, but the realtors have always come out on it. But again, I always tell people, they have an angle too.
Yeah.
And this is a vested interest group.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why they're coming at it. But if you look at what we historically have done as a board, we've done the complete opposite of what their argument is that we could do.
Right.
We've relaxed inspections.
Right.
The big thing that they throw out there is the home sprinklers and stuff. We've relaxed that.
Yeah, I saw that quickly.
So
that happened quickly.
We've done the complete opposite of a lot of the fear mongering that sometimes comes along with some of the special interest groups.
Yeah. But if there is that fear out there, I wanted to make sure I also, in my reading, I read that although you are home rule, that still has to pass through referendum. So if that's true, I say, okay, great. Maybe that just sort of quells some of that fear.
I saw one that was kind of funny, and it was put out by a group like that, and they said they could reach as far as making you put carpet in your house. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like if that's the stretch that you have to go, like I encourage people to do their research.
But I've seen transfer tax and research in villages as well, and I want to make sure everybody understands that we can find this stuff and you can look at it up on the internet and stuff. But basically, in comparing real estate transfer taxes from village to village or whatever it is for home rule villages, or even I don't know, I would assume that non-home rule villages can then implement a real estate tax by referendum or transfer tax by referendum too.
Honestly,
but
I don't know that
$10 per thousand was the highest I saw. $3 per thousand it was similar to what most people were at, something like that. $2.50, $3. But nobody wants to pay more taxes than they really have to or should, but I think that villages are doing it for certain reasons.
And I think the stance that a lot of them have taken is, if you're moving out of town, I don't mind hitting you on your way out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to say that a community like Berwyn, if you bought in Berwyn, they waived it.
Yeah.
But if you were leaving the town, that's when you were hit with that.
But I think, in my mind, well, maybe this is just one argument, but I think that people sometimes also feel like, well, you hit us with this certain tax, and then you build a castle for a village hall. And it's
I get it. And
I've gone into some of these village halls and been like, really? Is this necessary? And it's like, well, okay. It's nice, it's comfortable, and
but is it what you really need?
Yeah, and it's a great environment to work in. That's the other thing you mentioned, is that a lot of employees come and go, and they don't want to come into this drafty old building. My wife says it about teaching. You know, they go into these buildings, and sometimes they're just not good work environments. So I totally get that's a whole nother rabbit hole, and I totally get that you don't want to see the village do certain things, but at the same time, there's both sides to it. So,
and we're looking at moving out of here. That's been another battle cry of mine. This building is just we're putting good money into a bad investment every year just to keep plugging holes, and we're looking at moving into another location, and it's not going to be the Taj Mahal.
I think I remember that a few years ago when they were saying how should we fix that, should we change this place completely and stay in the same location or move locations?
And I've had differing opinions than most. I think that we've been sitting on prime real estate. If we're going to actually try to develop a lot of this community, I think the Roosevelt corridor is the key.
Yeah.
Why would we tie it up with our municipal building?
Yeah.
Especially, this is probably the deepest setback that you have on Roosevelt Road heading east. We have to look to the future, not just today. Just because your grandma likes to come and pay her water bill in person here, that's not going to be the future. That's not going to be 10, 15 years from now. People are going to be coming to Village Hall for far less. And so there's no reason for us to be on the main drag in town right in the center when we could possibly develop this and spur further development down the road. So
you it's like the analogy of going to a tiny house. Maybe it has everything you need. But you really don't need to spend a lot of maybe you don't spend a lot of time in it or something like that. I mean,
there's 40% of this building right now we're not even utilizing. And it's
see that. I walked through and I was like, this is pretty big.
There's a lot of space that
which shows you. I mean, guys, it shows you how little I've been in the village to be even. This is my first time back here. It's that kind of thing. So. again, I'll try to wrap this up because I know I want to respect your time. So thank you so much again.
No problem. And I just want to encourage people to reach out to me. I have no problem talking to anybody about
where
anything.
can they do that?
I'm your elected official. You can private message me on Facebook and I will get back to you, or you can email me Steker at westchester-il.org. I'll get back to you if you guys want to meet up, discuss, put a couple people together, and meet up for a coffee. I have no problem doing any of that at any time. That's what you elected me to do. So I get a lot of private messages that, and it's encouraging because I have been getting a lot of private messages regarding this particular topic, and they're like, I understand. I have a great understanding of this. I just don't want to put it out there because I don't feel like, getting bashed by some people with it, which is another thing that comes with social media.
Sure.
So by all means, you can reach me on Facebook. You can email me, and I will get back to you, and we could chat.
Awesome.
So I really appreciate you taking the time to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I might lose some people at this point, but I wanted to also just close with the fact that, again, this is sort of a pet project of mine. It's sort of self-sponsored at this point. So I have as I said in the beginning, I have my company Pravda LLC that does real estate, home buying and selling. If you're looking to buy or sell a home, or if you're looking for rehab, I do a lot of rehab work as well. And if you're looking to support what you've heard today, I think Frank Perry's next, and I'm looking to do this a lot more, especially quickly with Home Rule coming up. So with Frank, I hope to talk about some of the things that Home Rule does in terms of land and development and some of those issues. TIF is another one that's coming up that we didn't get a chance to talk about here, but that I think is one of the things that I'll talk with Frank about. But if you want to support what we're doing here, you can go onto the Facebook page Westchester Informed and click on Shop Now. That's just a link that takes you to a PayPal where you can donate or contribute, or I'll provide a direct link to the PayPal here in the YouTube video. But I appreciate you listening. I think that it makes us more informed. It gives us more power if we can have these kind of conversations and understand where our trustees are coming from, especially on topics like Home Rule. And there will be, hopefully we can have a lot more fun with this in the future once we get this all squared away, and we can sort of start to have some fun with this. But in the meantime, for right now, at least in the next couple months, I want this to be as good of a tool as you can get in terms of finding out what you need to know. So thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Until next time.